continuing our reading from The Breathless, Dark Ripples, Part 1. Chapter 6, Family Ties. He's meant to be happy, and so he is, even when he sometimes really, really isn't. For months on end following Sherlock's time at university, there are no ripples. Greg, now 35, briefly entertains the thought that the younger man might decide on further study. He dismisses it right away. One might expect a decrease in safe behavior in a young man newly free of responsibility, but Greg thinks he understands by now that the most dangerous times for Sherlock Holmes come when he feels trapped within rules and routine. As Greg's lungs remain under his own control week after week, he begins to give more of his focus to the less secretive aspects of his life. A respite is an opportunity to buckle down on the job, working hard to earn D.I. Parsons' continued approval. At home, things are good. Nadia stopped bringing up the ongoing debate over children so frequently, and in gratitude, Greg is making an effort to recapture the romance in their marriage. She's just been made a managing partner in her catering company, so she's away from home more too. He takes her out for dinner and dancing whenever their schedules line up. He leaves small gifts and silly notes around their flat for her to find. She writes short love poems on the wax paper when she packs sandwiches for him to carry to work, and she draws little hearts in the steam on the bathroom mirror. As winter approaches, sometimes they communicate solely through these sweet gestures for entire weeks, too busy to connect. Sometimes she wakes him in the middle of the night, and they enthusiastically make up for lost time. When Christmas rolls around, there's a special treat. Corey and Patrick fly in from the States with the kids to stay for 3 weeks. Greg and Nadia each manage to work magic with their respective schedules, arranging to join the newly arrived visitors in Bristol from Christmas Eve through New Year's Day. And suddenly, the old Lestrade home is packed like it hasn't been in years, full to bursting with life and noise. Mom is thrilled, industriously organizing meals with Nadia's assistance and spoiling her 2 grandchildren at every possible opportunity. Pat pulls Greg aside to talk while the ladies are busy singing Christmas carols with the kids. He confesses that he's searching for a work opportunity that would let him bring the family back to England. "Corey really misses you guys," he says. "It's been good living near my mom and dad. The kids get a lot of attention, but with Margaret living alone so long, we worry." "Dia and I visit as often as we can," Greg tells his brother-in-law. "I'd give my left ear to bring Mum into London where we could keep an eye on her, but she loves this old house too much." "Yeah, we know. It's a big old place, though. If I could swing a position here in Bristol, she'd almost surely take us in. But that's a pipe dream. Assuming I can get a transfer, it'll almost definitely be London. Maybe Cambridge. What's the housing market been like lately?" Greg shakes his head, smiling. "Not my area. But if you think this is really happening, I can look into it for you. One of my old mates went into real estate." "Right, I'll let you know then. Just don't say anything yet, okay, Greg? I don't want anyone getting their hopes up." Gabriella is going to be 3 years old come February, and Michael has just turned 10 that October. The 2 of them are already a great team. Mikey totes Gabby around on his shoulders and makes her squeal with laughter, and Gabby uses her prodigious talents of persuasion to wheedle sweets from all the adults, which she shares freely with her big brother. "Reminds me of when you were small," Corey says fondly, elbowing Greg as they watch her children playing a nonsense game under the dining table. "I wasn't near as cute," he replies. "Oh, you were? Especially in that little corduroy dress with the bow in your hair?" "You promised me you'd never speak of that again." "Can't help it," she protests, laughing when he pulls a face. "I was 8. Now I'm 40. The sight of you in ribbons is about the only solid memory I've still got from that long ago." "Not my fault, Corey, if your childhood wasn't memorable," Greg teases, and she pushes at his arm with a rude grin of her own. She gets up from the sofa to refill her wine, pausing in the next room to giggle at something with Dia, and Greg stays behind. He finds himself trying to recall his own early memories. Aside from the dress-up incident and a few other stories that have become family anecdotes, he realizes with some surprise that he doesn't have all that solid a grasp on his own childhood either. The time before his 13th year seems a foggy blur. After that, everything stands out in sharp contrasts, fading into obscurity in between the confusing adrenaline bursts of the early ripples. "What is this life I've been living?" he asked the house of his youth, staring up towards the ceiling in a brief pocket of quiet. "What could I have been without this, without Sherlock? If it were taken away now, would there be anything left I could call my own?" 2 weeks into the new year, after Corey's family has spent a final few days enjoying London, it's time for Greg and Nadia to accompany them to the airport. The last round of goodbyes leaves all the adults a bit misty-eyed, excepting perhaps Pat, who's got his attention focused on wrangling everyone into the right line. On the cab ride back home, Nadia is unusually silent. Greg unlocks the door and lets her pass ahead of him, and she goes straight to the kitchen. She pours herself a large glass of water and hands him a bottle of beer without his asking. He takes it unquestioningly, and they stand together near the sink, drinking. Reaching out, he rubs Nadia's shoulders with his free hand, lost in thoughts of his sister. She looked so content, so pleased with her lot, safe and happy, like someone without secrets to keep. Finally, Nadia interrupts his quiet contemplation with an observation of her own. "All this bluster of yours, all these years, about not wanting kids. You're terrified, aren't you, love?" Greg makes a non-committal sound, tightening and releasing his hand in answer. "I watched you today," she continues, "holding Gabby after she fell asleep. You acted like she was made of spun glass." "She may as well be. She's still so little." He can't help reciting the litany of remembered hazards in his head. Choking and rivers, plug sockets, cupboards and stairs, roads and roofs and snakes and stoves. "But you're so good, with her and Mikey both. Trust me, Greg, you'd make a great father." He shrugs, unseen behind her, and finishes off his beer. "I don't know, dear. I mean, I just don't feel very paternal, you know? I wouldn't have the first idea what to do. But I suppose anything's possible." She places her empty drinking glass in the sink and brings her hand up to meet his at her shoulder. "Well, I hate to break this to you, darling, but you're going to end up finding out anyway." She tips her head downward, deliberately, and closes her fingers delicately around his. It takes Greg an embarrassing handful of seconds to put pieces together. His mouth goes dry when he does. "You're telling me you're..." "Mm-hmm." Nadia has frozen under his hands, careful and tentative. She's not turning to look at him, instead waiting silently for his reaction. "Oh my God, Nadia, love." Just like that, his world has shifted on its axis. Everything he sees is tinted by a new layer of worry and hope and outright fear. Somewhere in his core, he's illogically certain it's not meant to be, certain that the god or fate or twisted force that chose him for his duty had intended that he remain tied to that duty alone. And yet, the thought of a baby with Dia's dark hair and his own brown eyes, the thought of having his own flesh and blood to hold in his arms, some little boy or girl who might have the chance to keep their breath for their own, he's meant to be happy, and so he is, even when he sometimes really, really isn't.